So am I the main interviewer, or are you? Am I just a kind of conversational point with you about it?
You're the only, and it's just you and me.
No. What?
I thought you were asking if there was another interviewer.
No. Like, are you taking the lead, or am I taking the lead?
You're taking the lead.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. Hello and welcome to the Ask the Industry podcast, episode 101. For those of you new to the show, I'm comedian Simon Caine, and this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the worlds of stand-up, comedy, radio, and today, nowhere. There's literally no one of influence on this podcast at all. No, genuinely, this is a little bit of a change to the format. I've called this episode Comedy 101. I'm hoping that the change in name will make sense in a minute, and also allow people that if this is your first episode, go back and listen to other episodes first, because this one is not indicative of the kind of content that I put out on this feed. What I have done is I have asked one of my good friends, comedian and club owner, Ben Verth, to come on and ask me questions. I've been working on this episode for a while. I wanted to do something exciting to bookend the first 100 episodes of the podcast, but it felt a little bit wrong. I say so wrong is the wrong word. It felt a little bit self-indulgent to do this as episode 100. It feels like a nice round number. It feels like it should get the proper respect it did, and I hope that you enjoyed John Montague's episode. I wanted this one to be someone else who I trust to interview me. As I say at the very start, I don't particularly like being interviewed. So someone who I respect and like interviewing me about what I've learned in the first 100 episodes of this podcast. I really liked it. We covered a real range of subjects. I think Ben felt I came off quite negative in the actual recording. I listened to it back and felt a little bit like I could see where he was coming from. But to be honest with you, I was in a headspace at the time where I was very much reflecting on the podcast and on the work that I've done. And I had got a lot of messages from people recently asking me about podcasting in Edinburgh and all kinds of questions that I don't really like. I'm not an expert on those. I just know what I do. But it made me feel a little bit like I needed to give people reality-based answers. So that's maybe where my head was at. But to be honest, I didn't think it was that negative. I feel like we covered the positives and the negatives of podcasting, creating a show, both at Edinburgh and beyond, and the future of my live work and what I'm going to be doing with this show. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get a lot out of it. And if you're a big fan of the show, you should get a little bit more of an insight into me, which might be of interest, or you're going to switch off right now. And I'm, not going to feel insulted, because it's definitely not a personal attack on me, is it? If you're still listening, thank you very much. We've sort of cut the week there. That was good. Before I hit play, I'm going to remind you that if you're new here, please do hit the subscribe button. If you're old here, please do give us an honest, ideally positive review in iTunes. And either way, please do consider joining the Facebook group. It's called Ask the Industry Podcast, and it's on Facebook, obviously. But for now, this is Ben Verth and me talking about the first 100 episodes. Off we go.
So, Simon, how does it feel to be the proverbial other side of the studio, as it were? I'm Ben Verth. I'm one of the directors of Monkey Barrel Comedy Club in Edinburgh, and for the 100th edition of Ask the Industry, 101.
Comedy 101 is the name of the episode.
And I'm interviewing you. You've interviewed 100 other people, including me. Well, so in which case some of them were double, sometimes triple interviews. So there's we're higher than 100. And now this is an episode as to what, if anything, you've learned from the last 3 years of trawling the mire that is British comedy and all its strata.
Yeah.
So I guess the first question is, what have you learned? What a wide and stupid way to start the interview.
Just keep it vague. Keep it vague at the top.
So I'll tell you what. Okay. So first and foremost,
can I say up top, just so listeners are aware, but also because I've spoken to you about this.
Yeah.
I don't like being interviewed.
Sure.
And I've told you about this before. And I will point out that one of the reasons I'm doing it with you is because I don't feel like it's going to be an interview. It's just going to be like a chat type thing.
Okay.
And
so I've kind of put on like a Michael Parkinson-esque kind of.
You're slightly different how you normally talk, but that's absolutely fine. I should say the only reason I prefer interviewing than interviewing, it being the interviewer instead of the interviewee, is first of all, I'm interested in other people more than myself. And secondly, I always find it a bit disingenuous, interviews. Like I always think that the other person doesn't really give a shit. So it's a lot easier when you're chatting to a mate than
well,
you know. Well, you know, and like you know,
I'm sorry, one could not be here today. And you had to put up with me.
Yeah. Well, where is John?
Okay. Well, so that seems like a decent place to begin then.
Go on,
is that let's say if let's get two-prong. Personally, has Ask the Industry been worth it? And professionally, has Ask the Industry been worth it? Because it is. Let's say what it is. I mean, that seems quite a weighty opening question. This has been the last 3-4 years of your life. This has been a regular release and editing and interviewing and the podcast. This has been a sizable project you've undertaken here.
Yeah.
Personally, has it been worthwhile? And professionally, i.e., even if it was not a podcast and you were just talking to these people down the pub with them, are you a better comic? Are you a better comedy performer? Are you a better comedy businessman for it, do you think?
Good question.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. I have to elaborate on those before I can answer that third bit. So, personally, yes. I have spoken to people that would not answer my emails previously. I have been invited to do things and speak at places that wouldn't know who I was if it hadn't happened. It's increased my social media work in my day stuff, including writing work and all kinds of stuff like that, which is not something that when I started I thought about. Like, I didn't email Hills Jaeger to get writing, like I didn't think that would be a correlating thing. So personally, yes, it's made me more comfortable talking to people. It's made me less worried about going to networking events because I kind of know people there now, which was uncomfortable because at the time of starting this, I was getting invited to things.
Sure.
And I think you're similar to me in that I'm not particularly a networker and I don't particularly like quote unquote networking events. Even if they are ones where everyone's getting pissed and whatever, like I'm still not very good at them and I still, overthink, I've not spoken to them or I've walked past them twice, they think I'm ignoring them or, I do that the whole, and no one cares, they're all doing the same thoughts.
Sure.
So being able to sit with people
You've learned how to be an asshole.
I didn't need to learn that. I learned but yeah, so it's made my life easier in the sense that now I can turn up to a lot of events and people kind of either know who I am or have met me because I've gone to their office and met their boss or whatever.
Or you know how to approach them on their own terms.
Yes, sure. and also a lot of the editing is taking out little bits of repetitive. So, some people will talk about something they specifically like in a podcast over and over again because it's on their mind. And it means that you have a reason to email them in a few weeks to go, oh, how did that go? How did that go? And, sincerely give a shit about their life, which is something that I like doing. Like I do in my regular life. If someone says to me they've got an exam coming up, I put it in my diary and I text them.
Sure.
Because to me, that's what you do. I know that's not what everyone does, but to me, that's what I think you do. But without knowing that information up front, you don't start the dialogue of people thinking they can just tell you things. And if people just tell you things, you find out a lot.
Sure.
And if you know a lot, it comes down to a lot of that. It's not just who you know, it's what you know as well in this industry. So personally, yes. Professionally, massively. As I was talking about before we started, Radio 4 emailed and are interested in an idea I've got. And I know people who are better than me. I know people who are worse than me, who have got in touch with Radio 4. I don't think... Barry Ferns said something really nice to me because I met up with him the afternoon that, I got that email. And he said... Radio 4 aren't backing the horse, they're backing the jockey. And that really put me at ease to go in to meet them. But also, he was saying, they know your work. They listen to your podcast. They know you know how to edit. And they know that you have a work ethic. So they aren't as worried about taking a risk on you as they might be with someone else who is better than you. Which...
Well, I suppose they also know to some degree as well that you have a listenership.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the I wouldn't say the most insulting thing, but the most frustrating thing about that meeting was them saying, "You're not well known enough to host it."
Yeah.
And I thought they were going to say that.
Yeah.
They were quite blunt about it, but in a very lovely way. I didn't take it personally at all. I sort of knew that was coming.
Yeah.
My frustration with that is that how do I get well known enough without them putting me on it? Do you know what I mean? Like how do you get to that stage without? But then I've got to this stage.
Yeah.
So maybe in a few years' time, if I had another idea, I'd be at a stage where they'd take it more serious. So professionally, yes. I mean, there's other examples of, I've sent things to people, commissioners and stuff, and got notes back. And I don't know many people at my quote-unquote level who can get notes from commissioners because they know you or because they want to talk to you or just because they like you because you've spent a bit of time with them and stuff. So, professionally, massively. Yeah. The reason this episode's happening is so that I can take a break from this. Partly so I can try and get the Radio 4 thing off the ground, but partly because I lose about 2 days a week to this and the time capsule one. And that's time I really want to spend writing and working on comedy. I still gig about 4 or 5 times a week, and I have a day job, which you're aware of that I'm kind of doing today. Sure. If he's
a baker and one of the best goddamn bakers in town.
Well, if you're gonna do something.
I don't know why that tickled me so much to picture you as a baker. That is not your job. Anyone who listens, I'm sure knows that's not your job. I don't know why it tickled me that you just like being like the number one kind of kid's idea of a Victorian job.
I like the idea that someone's first episode is this one, and they've gone, why is he doing this if he's a baker?
It's probably quite good money. Yeah. Oh, I guess you get up early, you're done by 3 o'clock, everyone's got their pies.
You want to do a podcast.
You got a whole night for doing stand-up comedy. So,
basically that's what I do, guys. I bake cake. Well, I don't sell them, I eat them. Well,
economically, that is not a good idea for you.
It's not the best business model, but it works for me, and I'm constantly on a sugar high, so I don't care. But no, I have often so I was thinking about this the other day. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I wonder how many friendships I've neglected or not started as a result of spending time sat at home watching other people on the internet. I know it sounds weird, but instead of having a conversation with you, I might stay at home for an hour and watch a few videos and have conversations in a comments box with strangers who I'll never really be able to follow up with. So it's
but
the same
is that
thing
just the modern ideal of how often do relationships fall apart because you've watched the television or read a book?
Yes.
Or, read the paper, had a bath, whatever, just did something private and relaxing. Edit, cut, forget it.
I'm leaving every wank joke in, mate. I'm leaving all the way.
Just a wanking baker.
It's just a wanking baker with a Radio 4 series.
It's the dream. That's the comedy dream, innit, mate?
It's what my mum wanted for me when I started. That's when I was doing the Amuse Moose course.
God, we've both gone quite northern, haven't
we? We have, haven't we? I've been hanging out with Barry Dodds a lot. I want to get better at comedy, but I also am bored of comedy. Yeah. In the sense that I don't like man on a mic or woman on a mic, whatever, comedy. I think when you just stand there, I find that I can't really watch an hour of that, and I'm trying to work with a few people at the moment.
So that's interesting because that is you up to this point.
Yeah, I know.
You've been a solo microphone performer. You're not a PowerPoint or prop or kind of character artifice kind of comic. Is this a scoop, Simon? Is this
you are Parkinson getting this?
So you're going to move direction.
Sort of.
Are you allowed to say what you want to do?
Okay. Because I don't have to.
I mean, it's your podcast.
I can edit all of this out. You've forgotten how editing works.
Or I don't know. I've got a Doctor Who podcast. I was like, I'll be back here? Because I usually record it in the same room as well.
Cool.
So I was like, why are we not talking about the Time Monster right now?
We can talk about Time Capsule. No.
Okay. So yeah, you're changing. You're changing tack.
Sort of. I think. Okay. I feel like.
And actually, before you start on that,
go on.
Sorry, I keep interrupting, but I think it's maybe quite an interesting point. Is that is you changing tag? You said there is because you can't watch an hour of it.
Yeah.
Is that because? But what do you feel about performing an hour of it?
fine once or twice.
You can't watch it, so it's maybe not to your taste. But the actual performance of it then.
Fine.
Like, you tired of that?
Fine once or twice, but to do it for, like, for example, I've signed up for Edinburgh, to do it for 28 consecutive shows or whatever,
okay,
I will probably go and say...
But is that because of Edinburgh, though?
Okay, let me explain. So the issue I've got is, and I know I'm going to insult a lot of people right now, and I don't mean to, I think there's a slowing down of originality in certain areas. Mm-hmm. And I think, so if we take podcasting for an idea, a lot of people start podcasts where they're doing exactly this kind of thing, where they're just having a chat with a mate.
Two sexy lads.
Yeah. Wait, there's another one coming.
Chin wag. Yes, the sexy lads will be along in just a few minutes, listeners.
Great for an audio medium. Just imagine sexy men in the room.
Hey, here we are. Gary, the sexy lad. Oh, hey, Gary. Yeah, no, I'll give you the microphone in a minute. Hey, thanks, Ben. This is not
that's his stage name, Gary the sexy lad.
Gary the sexy lad.
Gary the sexy
oh my
lad.
God, that's your new character.
That's my new... Right, well, now
28
we're into
days
it.
at Edinburgh, Gary the sexy lad.
That's why I'm doing 4 sit-ups a night. That's all I can do. I just... So, okay... With podcasting, I think we had this discussion about Doctor Who podcasting. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of football podcasts. There's a lot of comedians interviewing comedians podcasts, and I don't for a second think that this one isn't just a offshoot of a bunch of other ones that do the same thing in another industry, because it is. It is. If you're interested, the Tim Ferriss podcast is one that I listened to a lot before I started my one, and I would have to cite it as something that made me start RC, or one of the things that made me start RC industry, because it allowed me to talk to people and it allowed me to all that kind of stuff, right? So it's not like that at all. I just think in comedy, I'm sure I don't know how to say it without insulting people, and I don't mean to insult people. I think if you understand what I'm saying, then you won't be insulted. But if you don't, if you're getting defensive right now, then you might be who I'm talking about. But it's more that.
Okay, so what essentially you're saying is that you, and presumably the reason you started this podcast, and it surely hasn't diminished over the course of creating this podcast, is that you have more than yourself, you have a great love and a great passion for the art.
Yeah.
And you want to try and do your best for the art.
Yeah.
And if anything, in the last couple of years, there's been, particularly coming out of London, there has been a true spirited, courageous, adventurous attempt to do something very, very different than just the single man, the single performer, the microphone. And let's face it is usually men. Like, I mean, when people think of stand-up, I mean, I don't mean to insult anybody, but I think that like particularly American as well. Like when people think stand-up, they think of a complaining white man. Yep. Which is exactly what you are.
I am a complaint. I'm doing it right now.
But you think that you can offer more.
No. Here's the thing. I want to offer more. Yeah. And I tell you what really struck me recently. I've had a few people write to me on Facebook who have either seen me a few. So if people come and see me a few times and they add me on Facebook, I'll kind of accept, which I probably shouldn't put out publicly. But if they've seen me once, I tend to not. I'll follow me on Twitter or add the mailing list or something. I don't want cause you only get a limited number of friends. I don't want everyone doing that. But if you're going to come and see me on a regular basis, or you want to be like a bit friendly rather than, whatever, feel free to add me and I'll probably accept. Partly because I get to know people, because I like getting to know people, which is where this all came from. But I've had a few messages from people recently because I posted about some things to do with serial killers, some things to do with JFK, some things to do with my nan dying, and all the messages have been, you've been more insightful and more funny than normal. And one person wrote to me, and I know it shouldn't just be one person that makes you make a difference in your life or whatever, but sometimes it just is. They said, why don't you ever talk like this on stage? And I said, because it would be a longer build, or it would be a more boring build, and it's whatever. And they said, yeah, but you never hear comedians talking about things. You only hear them talking, it's get to the punchline quick. Do you know what I mean? Like almost as if they'd rather cut down the setup so that, they could just get as many jokes in as possible. Sure. And she was like, the reason I liked your, the Buddhism and Cat show, the 2015 show, was because it said something to me. And you covered enough subjects that meant that I felt like I knew you, and B, I felt like I got to think about something afterwards. And one of my frustrations with last year's show was lots of comedians came to see it, which was really nice. And I think it's no small part to do with this podcast. And a lot of them really liked it. A lot of people who came to see Buddhism and Cats were not as fond of it. And I think it was because it was kind of a bit more comedian funny, if you like, than Buddhism and Cats. And so some of the jokes were a bit inny to what you might know if you're if you're on the circuit. So this time I want to do something which is a bit more, let's say, commercially viable, but also something that is a bit different to both of those, where I get to maybe be a bit more practical. Maybe I want to play around with lighting a bit more. I think that's something that's massively not done.
So is this vague ideas, or what will that look like?
At the moment, they're very vague ideas.
Yeah, okay.
But the principal point of what I want to do is I want you to feel something about the jokes. I want them to not just be set up gag. I want them to. I mean, it makes me sound like a prick. I'm aware of.
Okay, so what I'm visualizing, I guess, is the kind of the Kitson-esque move from the stand-up to the theatre maker. Like, did you see Daniel Kitson at the Roundhouse?
I did actually, yeah. My concern with going anywhere near, I joked with my friend and said I should call the new show Funnier Than Kitson or Die Trying, because I thought that'd be funny. Yeah. And she said, no, but your problem there is and again, aiming your comedy at comedians again, because mainly comedians know who Kitson is. Like she said, I only know who Kitson is because you mentioned him to me because you'd just gone to see his this was a few days after Roundhouse. I think Kitson does amazing work. I think he's really, really good. I don't want to be him though. I think if you, the big issue that you have when you first start out is that you kind of can't get rid of your own influences for maybe the first 100, 200 gigs. And the last thing I want to do, nearly 1,000 gigs in, is start to emulate someone else.
No, but it's but it's a good place to start, certainly. And it seems like what you want to do is something a bit more truthful and emotional. But in terms of what that actually looks like, is that still going to be a single performer?
Yes, but
let's
eliminate some things.
Let's unpack it like this. Okay. Bringing it back to the Ask the Industry podcast, is that it is not just comics that you speak to on the podcast.
No.
It is television producers. It is live and television promoters. It is people from PR. It's reviewers. It's critics. It's designers. It's some awards people. Like, it's everybody that a comic in a given year might encounter. So when you're right at the beginning of the process of this Simon 2.0 comedy person.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've just, if you want to know where I'm at, genuinely, on the cycle of where I normally would be at, I would do Edinburgh. I would then tour that show for 3 months. I would then probably have a few shows where I warm up for a recording thing. So like around January time. Yeah. While I'm doing that, I've started writing the new show and applying for Edinburgh.
Okay, so let's start with the writing then.
But I'm at the stage where I've just thrown out about 20 minutes worth of stuff that I was writing last year for this year's show.
Okay.
Because it's just jokes.
Sure.
And one of my friends literally said to me, it was really random, because they said, oh, but I love that. And I was like, why though? And they went, oh, it's just funny, innit? And I went, that's why.
So
don't
get me wrong. Just jokes, jokes completely disengaged from you as a person, or as an anecdotal material.
I love jokes.
Yeah.
I would have stopped this podcast and I would have stopped doing comedy if I didn't still adore writing jokes.
Yeah.
I do it all day, every day as a job. So it's it's not that at all. It's just. I did a gig the other day with someone who did, and I don't want to give specifics because it's fairly easy to work out who they were, but let's just say they went on stage and they said, oh, hey, it's really nice to be here because I'm from insert place, so I really mean it, kind of thing.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And the amount of times I've seen that joke, there's no way they've not seen that joke by someone else.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you've wasted 20 seconds of 50 people's life here.
Yes, but what was the context? What was the
opening
gig?
joke? Literally.
No, what was the gig?
It was just a club gig.
Okay, so...
And don't get me wrong, at club gigs, you kind of want to get a laugh as quickly as possible. And I'll probably do that tonight at this gig. I'm not downplaying it. I'm just... For me, as artsy-fartsy and pretentious as I'm probably going to come off,
Sure.
I think there's more, like, comedy can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen, I was talking about The Elvis Dead before this kind of thing. I showed that I've neither seen Elvis or The Evil Dead, and I've still seen neither, and I thought it was hilarious.
Sure.
And
this is Rob Kemp's
output.
Edinburgh and Leicester lauded comedy show.
Exactly.
The Elvis Dead.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen Beck Hill. I adore her flip chart things. As much as some people call them gimmicky, I couldn't give a shit if they're gimmicky or not. They tell me so much about her. Mm-hmm. They tell me so much about what she's thinking about and how passionate she is. And, to put it this way, to sit down and write a joke, right, is one thing. But to sit down, write a joke, choreograph a song, come up with a flip chart, draw the flip chart, get it wrong, redraw the flip chart, get it wrong again, redraw the flip chart, take it across town to, you learn about a person from something like that. And I don't know, maybe I want to become gimmicky. Maybe I don't know, but I just don't want it to. And also, I don't know if you find this, but like, I have friends that come up to the Fringe every year and they'll see 8 shows in a day. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I'll go, oh, what do you really enjoy? And they'll go, oh, there was that one with, and it's just the vaguest description. Yeah. And the only way they'll know what it was is because they'll go through their ticket stubs and remember the name of it. Yeah. Or they'll go, oh, is that one at the Pleasance? And,
So you want, when an audience encounter you, to be meaningful.
Not just meaningful, but like, I suppose memorable is the best word. But I think everyone wants that.
Yeah.
But I think
so
I think being funny isn't enough anymore.
Well, okay, so you're basically saying that there's going to be certain areas of comedy that are closed off to you. For instance, is what you're thinking going to be a Friday, Saturday night thing? There is a particular audience.
Are you talking about clubs or are we talking about Edinburgh?
No, I'm talking about clubs. It sounds like what you want to be is resolutely the festival, the Fringe comic. That's where you can have your own hour and 20 minutes, and you can really build up your own relationship with an audience rather than have to combat or ride the wave of another comic or compere on a Friday, Saturday night in front of a crowd who, let's face it, don't care.
Yeah, don't care.
They're just
they don't
so
care.
ungeared to not care.
But that's
they're
fine.
having a nice time, regardless if it's you or if it's somebody else.
I think it was Phil, Nicola I was talking to about this, or even if it's not, he's someone to look at in this area. He does club work amazingly well, and he writes great shows, and he manages to balance the books on both those things. Yeah, and obviously does a lot of work outside of that as well. And he's just one of many that I could pick, but he's in my head at the moment. So let's go with that. I think it is possible to balance both, but what you have to do to make that work is pick your gigs more strategically, enjoy those gigs more, which means that you kind of are going to put your energy into them more than before I started doing like Edinburgh and other festivals, I was just doing club stuff and trying to get into gigs and things like that. And I still am up to a certain point to other clubs, but if you're putting all your energy into that, I've got friends of mine who are now in that circuit or on, that sort of scene, who hate the fact that they just do the same 20 minutes every night for 6 nights a week, and that's, not to diss the circuit at all, because, I've got friends of mine who love that and adore doing their 20 every, sort of every other night and whatever. And I love doing clubs. There's, but like I said to you off mic, and I'm more than happy to put it on mic, there are clubs I hate doing. And I did for a while, and I probably will avoid now. But there are clubs I adore doing, and I'm more than happy to crack out a 20, like a tight 20-minute or a much more loose-formed but well constructed 20 minutes to do those rooms, because I love doing them. Yeah. So,
but what you're saying now is that you're making a quite a keen choice that personal comic development is the next step, which I find. Odd, because we first met by doing essentially club stuff, but in more studenty, more intellectual crowds. Yeah. And I always found you to be so it's odd that you are dissing past Simon, because I always thought you to be quite a decently self-reflective, decently emotionally perceptive, smart comic.
I'll take that. It's going on a poster.
So it's odd that you're reacting against it. Like, you don't think that was, or you don't think that it's enough of the personal quality that an audience can get from you.
Let's put it this way, okay? If you knew you were going to die in 20 years, right? What would you want to do in the next 20 years?
Well, that is quite a weighty question.
What would you eliminate from your life right now that means that you would do more of the stuff you would do because you know that you've only got...
Well, I would eliminate all the stuff that gets me any money, which means I'll be dead before 20 years.
Makes sense. Okay, well, the barrel's closed, guys.
Okay, so I see what you mean. There is a you've obviously got to want to engage more with the purer comic sense that you want to deal with. So
I think there's enough room to be more creative in this.
Yeah,
and I think that business, which I understand more acutely than I would argue that I would like to anymore, because thanks to this podcast, I'm phenomenally aware of how certain businesses work and how they operate and how TV works and all this kind of stuff, which is why I know, you know, the way I'm going, I'm probably not going to get on Live at the Apollo. The way I'm going, I know I'm not going to get a panel show thing. The coming to terms with things like that mean that you're a lot more free to go, well, I'll just be really, really good, and they'll have to come knocking if they wanted me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
So would you? Do you think you would have reached this if all you'd done is be a comic?
No.
You think it's the process of creating this archive of industry? Well, these Ask the Industry archive.
Yeah.
Is essentially this is the culmination of all the work that you've done. Is that it's helped you to understand yourself better and what you want better in a way that you could not have done had it not been for recording these episodes.
Yeah. I mean.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Simon. That is.
Well, let's put it another way. Let's put it another way. Let's say let's say, you know, let's go back. Let's say to Beehive days, you know, sort of 3 years ago, 4 or 5 years, whatever, right? And you're more interested at that point, I presume, at becoming a sort of moving up comedically, rather than running your own thing necessarily, but you still do, right? If your aim at that point was to get on TV, and I told you, right, I've had enough chats with, you know, people in TV, I can answer most questions that you want to know.
Yeah.
And I probably have, because I allow people to ask questions via me, and I will ask them, and if they'll let me put it out and they will allow it to be answered, it can come out. If I said to you, right, nicest way possible, right now you won't get on TV because of a quota, or because you live too far away from the studio that they're not flying in Edinburgh, you know, if you were Scottish in London, they might take you, you know, or whatever the thing would be, right? I'm not saying those are actual reasons, but let's just say these are reasons, right? You would have to realign your plan to aim for the other targets in your career and hope the other ones come back around based on the fact that so for example, with the Radio 4 thing, I've kind of, and I said this going into the meeting with them, I know you're not going to let me host it. Like, if this all goes to plan, I know who I am, what I look like, what I sound like, where this is going. I know that the show you're adapting it to, I'm not going to be on, right? I might be a guest on it maybe, but I'm not going to host it, right? I know I get a producer credit, for example, but that doesn't really work well on a poster, right? So I know that if I get my foot in the door with that, and I carry on with this, and they carry on listening, and I hopefully don't piss them off or anything like that by saying something stupid, in 5 years' time, if I just carry on building an audience, I'll be at a stage where maybe I'll be in a better place where they know I can make a show. They've worked with me before, and I'm...
So I've certainly heard this before. I've certainly heard people from Radio Scotland tacitly, but also overtly say that you know, you said that Barry said they're not backing the horse, they're backing the jockey. I guess it's also about they're backing the stables for which that jockey works as well. It's about the audience that you can bring to their medium, as opposed to them championing you and try and build you an audience for you. So they're looking for you to bring people with them. But
they're a business, is the point.
Well, so they're absolutely a business.
And you can't fault them for wanting. So, you know, in that meeting we were discussing names and you know, a little bit sort of saying that we'd love to have this person on, whatever. The level that they would want guests on, let alone host. I can't get on.
Sure.
Like people, you know.
So radio aside, then.
Yeah.
I mean, it also sounds then that there's been a lot of very decent, very directionary information that you've received from the podcast, and it also sounds quite bittersweet as well. Is that there's been some hard truths about you as a comic, or you even as a person that you've encountered. Is there any particular insight? I mean, you know, way back at the beginning, did you want to be on Live at the Apollo? Did you want to be on Mock the Week?
Yes and no. I couldn't actually care less.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, there'll be a percentage of people listening to this who go, well, he's only saying that because he's not going to get on it.
Sure.
Or he's just admitted he's comfortable with it. It's never been, like when I started, my aim was literally just see if I could do it.
Yeah.
And it was because I loved comedy and I wanted to know if I could actually do it. It wasn't, I wonder if I could do the TV thing.
Yeah.
You know, because it just hadn't entered my thing. The main reason I wanted to do it is because at the time I was really, you know, like when I was going through a period of moving up and all that stuff, my parents had there was no reference point for them to be able to tell their friends. They would just go, he tells us it's going well.
Yeah.
And if they said, he's been on Live at the Apollo, even if I was on it once, they could milk that for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And they would not, and even if my career was on a downturn and I stopped and whatever, they would always bring that one thing up, right? So for me, it was more for them, if you like, which is not the best reason to go after something. If I was given the option right now, like if someone said, we want you on, I would probably turn it down. If in a couple of years' time they offered it to me and I still felt like how I feel now, I would probably take it on. But that's only because at the moment I don't want that amount of attention on me.
Sure.
In that way. Now, that sounds really self-defeating in this ghost. Hello. The sexy man's here.
Down the stairs?
Upstairs, mate.
Upstairs, okay.
I have a massive shit in the one downstairs.
Can you say it just a little bit louder?
Oh, Simon Caine's so good. Yeah.
The sexy man is definitely here.
Gary the sexy lad.
Where was I? But my point being, I can't remember what I was saying.
The point being that you were essentially following a pathway that you thought was the pathway of comedy.
Yeah.
As opposed to the one that you want. And what you're finding now is you've come to the crossroads and you want to pursue your way through the magic forest. Which is for you. That's
what I call it.
Okay.
I just... There are and I can name them if you want, but there are comedians I look up to.
Sure.
Because of how they artistically perform and how they...
Okay, well I can't imagine that this is a place of insult, so you want to name some comics?
No, it's fine. Well, if we start with Kitson, for example,
Sure.
I think he artistically displays things very articulately.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think the way that he says ideas, I think is really good. I'll be honest, I've only been a fan for about a year and a half. I haven't seen all of his stuff, but what I have seen, I like. Stuart Lee is someone who currently I haven't seen much for about a year, maybe a year and a half. I want to go and see his new stuff. But there was a period for about 2 years where, first of all, I was seeing a lot of imitators, of which I got compared to as a competition.
Sure.
They said I was a skinny version of Stuart Lee, which I thought was just, why are you insulting him? Like, why are you bringing him into this for no reason at all? There's no reason to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was dieting.
So I never particularly got that from you.
What, skinny?
Well, no, I never particularly got the Stuart Lee vibe.
They said I was. I remember the review because I found it really funny. It was Julia Chamberlain, and she said he is deliberately suppressing all emotion, which makes it hard for you to connect with him on a deeper level. Right. But he has amazing writing, or great writing. Mm-hmm. And I think I emailed her about it because I was like, I don't think I'm suppressing my... I don't feel like I am. I don't feel like I ever... when I started, I was very much a deadpan one-liner. Yeah. So I'd agree with it then, but this was 2014 or something, so it's like 3 or 4 years in. I'd sort of given up on one-liners by that point. But anyway, so I mean, I can name some more. I think the world of Beck. I think she's amazing at what she does and how she does it, and I think Louisa Omerlan, the passion behind her performances and the way that she often will do so. It's not sometimes it's in the performance that it's funny.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't listen to a Louisa album and get it all, because you've got to see her and how she does it, and I think that's important as well. So it's a lot of I don't know. I just want to be good at I'm not doing it right now. I just want to be good at articulating a thought and a feeling, and why something pisses me off, and why it's fun. I think the best I've done it so far, I don't know if you remember this joke, was the Pancakes for Equality joke about why I hate International Women's Day, because it's a reminder of how shit men are.
Okay.
And I compared women only getting 1 day a year to how many days we give pancakes.
Yeah.
And then compared it to Shark Week.
Yeah.
And then did my own little Martin Luther King sort of esque speech. I think that's the best I've done it so far.
Yeah.
There's a joke in my current show which I think's better than that, and I unfortunately struggle to do it in clubs because I need them to know a bit more about me than I get time to do.
Yeah. So going back to it, it seems like what you're trying to cultivate is more the artistic festival show as opposed to the 20-minute club set.
Yes.
That's where you're aiming with writing. That's where you're aiming with a performance hope.
Are you telling me I'm not on tonight? Is that what's
Well, after this conversation, I look forward to you Friday night Edinburgh crowd. That is.
I'm going to talk about living in London because I know how much Edinburgh audience.
Don't worry. I think most people are English on the bill this evening.
Oh,
so
good. Good. Don't want to be around those Scottish comedians.
Who have we got? No, we got a Glasgow guy. We got Mancunian Asian guy. We got you. We got a Glasgow woman.
Got you. So. no hooks there for you.
Sad, skinny, emo comic wannabes. That's what you're talking about here.
But even then, though, and this is not a diss at you, and I'm sure you didn't book it like this. Think about how you've described them, right? You can easily, if you wanted to be on TV, right? If they've got, put it this way, for variety's sake, they just couldn't have. They probably do still sometimes, but they probably couldn't have 6 white men across a panel, all looking roughly the same, who all do roughly the same thing.
Sure.
You would have to randomly go, right, we're going to do one from the north, there's an accent in there, we have to do one from, an ethnic comedian, we'd have to have a female, because there's a million reasons why you would have to do that sort of thing. And
we just booked who was available. So that's not like we've fulfilled
not you, but I'm saying that if you were booking for a TV show,
sure,
you could describe people like that. And when you describe what I do, I don't think many people have a 2-word or 1-word thing that goes before me. I mean, you could go white male, but that describes so many people now that almost that doesn't come into it.
Yeah.
So I think already what I've done with this and with my other podcasts and with the sort of audience I'm cultivating, it takes them maybe 20 seconds to convince a friend to come and see me. Yeah. Which is not a problem, because I'd rather shake off people who are, who are not
going to be invested in ideas.
Yes. So I come off like a prick in this. I literally feel like I'm going to hate this edit, because I feel like I'm going to be listening back going, mate, you've just got jokes.
So what I'd maybe like to move on to talking about, because I think we are trying to celebrate.
I'm happy
it's a quite considerable body of work that you've put together. And with just looking through some names of the people that you've had on, it's worth going over, because I think people can see the word one, or see the number 100, but they don't quite know what that equates to.
What's your favourite episodes? Let's pick those out.
Well, no, let's just go through it. So you've had people like David Quantick, who is a satirical comic and writer, TV and radio.
Brass Eye and stuff like that.
Bruce Dessau, reviewer. Louisa Omerland, we talked about. Jeff Whiting, a promoter, Martha Forth Comedy. Beck Hill's been on. Joe Lycett's been on.
Amazing guy.
Kate Copstick, reviewer.
Yep.
Who else have we got here? Daryl Martin, head of Just a Tonic Comedy Club. Aidan Goatley, Toby Haydock.
Lovely man.
So I
feel like I should give everyone a compliment.
Adam Bloom, Karen Corrin, Earl Oaken McPerrin, Robert Popper, Daniel Sloss, Armando Iannucci, the Parapod, like a podcast about podcasts. I mean, there really is any. Who else have we got? Ben Venables, Barry Ferns, and Sarah Pierce, Michael Redmond. So you really have roped in a quite considerable raft of people to create this. I think what I'd like to do is now talk about how any of that has changed the mechanics. Maybe it's probably too nebulous to talk about how you will proceed from here, but how have the mechanics of how you put together a show, how you put together you as a comic, changed by these individual interviews? So let's start with writing. So you've got 2 festival shows under your belt.
Yeah.
Right, so let's talk about that.
Okay.
Festivals as opposed to just club sets.
Because I hate clubs.
So I would presume that the amount of writing that goes into a club set is not just because it's a smaller duration on stage, but it's also because it's more about the honing it as opposed to generating new material.
Yeah.
What is your this is sounding very comedian, but I think we should delve into it because this is more than anything a resource for people to learn what fits for them as developing comics. When you've been writing, when you're going to start writing, what's the Simon process there?
The current process.
Well, the current process, and has it been educated by any other writers or the directors that you've spoken to?
Very, yeah. So the first show I did, which I wouldn't even call a show, was called Challenge Accepted, and it was in 2013. Oh shit! And it was literally 28 jokes, and I brought the audience in, and I said, pick a number and I'll do that joke, and it was kind of a choose your own comedy thing, and it was largely because I'd been writing for about a year and a half for it, and none of the jokes had any connection. They were just what I was thinking about and what I found funny at the time.
Sure.
Again.
And was it jokes in the sense of the joke, the setup and the punchline, or was it anecdotal? Was there biographical stuff?
All kinds.
Right. Okay.
It was all kinds. It was
just a hodgepodge of comedic writing.
Yeah. Some of it was surreal. Some of it had props involved. Some of it had just one-liner, punchy stuff. So sometimes they go 15 and it'd just be a one-liner, go like that, next number, and we'd move on. Sure. Some of it would be like 26 and it'd be a 5-minute joke. And
so how did you assemble all that then?
Literally, it was just 18 months of just writing. Right. Just every day, or at least every couple of days, writing whatever I found funny, whatever I thought was funny, and then throwing out whatever was not there. And then I tried to put it into a narrative, and it just didn't work. And there's no point in trying to force a narrative on something because it's just not there.
So the classic, a lot of people's debut at a given festival is the longer club set.
3 20-minute sets.
I speak a lot about masturbating. It's going to be a show about masturbating.
Yeah. No one's done that.
Yeah.
I did that, and I did that around the year my granddad died, and I took a bucket up from prostate cancer, and I gave all the proceeds to them. The best thing about that was it taught me to budget for Edinburgh, because if you know going up to Edinburgh that every penny goes into a bucket you can't open because it's one of those charity ones, you literally will lose every penny. So as a result, I had to work around that as a limitation. I think I did it with Freestival, and I got quite a good deal with them at the time. And I was staying in a very cheap place. I can't remember what it was, but I think in total it cost me about £1,100, which is quite low for a free fringe show. Obviously food and everything else on top, but that's the show costs. Then I wrote Buddhism and Cats, which took about maybe 18 months to 2 years after that to write. That was literally 2 years of my life in an hour, is the way I kind of tell people now, because it was a relationship I was having, which meant I didn't need to write a narrative because it was my life.
Sure.
There were only a few things that needed to be hyperbolaed, which was quite useful. In hindsight, the relationship was not the best one for me, and I think they'll even admit that themselves, partly because they did the ending, so they probably knew that better than I did. For me, it was a height. I've not had a relationship like that since, thankfully, and it was heightened everything more than most other relationships I've had. So what everyone was thinking was hyperbole was actually quite genuine, which in hindsight I should have seen. So for me, that was quite useful in some sense that, I realised that my perspective on things isn't necessarily everyone's. Then after I did that show, I tried to get a show at the Fringe in 2016, didn't get it, so I went on tour, and that's when I started writing last year's show, because while you're running around touring, you kind of got a little bit of opportunity to do club sets and other bits that you can try out extra jokes in and stuff. The way that process worked was I was heavily immersed at the time in the industry and in the industry side of things. In answer to your other question, in fact, I've had 2 agents tell me to my face they couldn't do any more for me than what I'm already doing. They just wouldn't take me on because they're like, you know, I've already got 8 acts, 10 acts, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the time and energy to put into your career in the same way you're doing it. You're out meeting people all the time. You're scripting things all the time. You're, you know, producing more content than some of my acts already. You know, you don't need me, which is a nice thing to hear. First time.
Yes. Okay.
Second time you ask yourself the question, what are they telling you?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I'm sure they're not, you know, I'm still friends with both of them. So I'm pretty sure they're not bullshitting me.
Right, okay.
You know, again, it's a business move for their part.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So that's the reason why this show, even its title, Laughter is the Best Placebo, it's very in-jokey. And you know, I mean, I think you saw one of the dog shit previews I did in London. You know, the early jokes in it, I think the second joke in was something like, you know, you have to start with your second best joke and end with your best joke. So here comes 55 minutes of filler. You know, it's you know, if you're not a performer, you're not aware that that's a lot of the structure of a show, and it breaks it down very quickly for me to go right, because normally comedians laugh at that, but audiences go, why is he putting down the show this early on? And it's sort of not meant to be putting it down. It's me just acknowledging that, you know, we're all following this really weird carbon copy. And I feel like, in hindsight, that was me getting very frustrated with me sort of following what I thought I had to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I wrote that, did that in Edinburgh, toured that for 3 months, and since then I wrote about 20 minutes worth of material that I've been doing at clubs and around the place. Since Edinburgh, so sort of September. I tend to, this is why I'm doing or hoping to do a selection show this year in Edinburgh. I tend to do material for next year's show as in spots around Edinburgh, so that if anyone comes to see the show, they don't hear 10 minutes of it somewhere else and then come and see us sick for the show twice.
Sure, okay.
Because that seems a little bit like I'm ripping them off. I understand why people do it,
yeah,
but I just don't like doing it. So as a result of doing 100 spots in Edinburgh 2017 or whatever, I was able to write 20 minutes fairly quickly and then bed it down over the time when I was doing club spots.
So again, it makes it sound, if I may say, it makes it sound that the podcast has been something bittersweet for you.
Yeah.
It sounds that you have personally grown by analysing your own comic and career trajectory, but with that taking a little longer of a process because you were immersed in glad handing via a podcast with the industry. And so I find that very interesting. I find that what do I want to say? I don't know.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine this, right? Imagine you...
Well, let me interrupt you, counter-interrupt you, is that I'm trying to find a positive way of not asking you. It sounds like you regret the whole thing.
No. Mate, okay, of all the people I know on the circuit, you can ask me anything, and I'm probably going to answer it.
Yeah.
I don't regret it at all.
Okay. But it sounds like the road to Damascus comedy moment has not come because of a greater comic industry figure.
No,
awakening you. It's just been in an opposite reaction to information you've had. You've come across the true Simon Caine.
So, right, if you're a comic listening to this, or you're Ben sitting here, right? Imagine this, right? Imagine you're a comedian with no representation in any way, right? So you are completely independent from anything, right? Which sounds like a very bohemian lifestyle and a very dreamy, ooh, look at me, Kitson-esque thing.
I'm an indie artist, mate.
The reality is it's a lot of fucking work and emails.
Yes.
But imagine that, right? But imagine that you could email people in industry and ask for their advice, ask them questions, both on and off the record. There was no way that you wouldn't be guided by a lot of different opinions.
Sure.
Which are all based both on their personal preferences, but also the business that they're representing. So it's not bittersweet. It's just, and one of my favourite episodes, if you're interested, is the episode 40 with Ian Coyle of Dave and UK Gold, where the first thing he said to me, because I thought this would take longer to get out of the sort of conversation with him, because at the time I'd done a few interviews with people from the BBC, And constantly they were saying we're a public broadcaster, public broadcaster, public broadcaster, blah blah blah. It was a very hard line that they have to do what the public wants. If enough members of the public do a petition for more religious shows, they will have to do more religious shows. Yeah. That's the way it works. The Dave one was the first commercial station that I'd done, which meant that I kind of wanted to know, where is that different? And the first thing he said to me when we sat down was, can you not bill me as a commissioner? I'm an ad man. All I have to do is be able to prove that we can sell ads on it. Mm-hmm. And if we can sell an ad on it, we can make it. The amount of friends of mine who have amazing show ideas that I can't make because there's no way an ad or an advertiser will put an ad on that, on our channel at least. I can't do it. And it drives me insane every day because I'll get an email from a friend and I'll go, and he'll be frustrated about the fact that he can't help that person out. Mm-hmm. Okay. And yet there'll be a million ideas that come his way that he maybe doesn't like as much or that he believes in less. And that's not putting down any shows on there at all. You know, there are hundreds of, Dave Gorman's Modern Life, he was very proud of the fact that he'd made so many of those and he loves that show. And I think that show's absolutely outstanding, right? But unfortunately, when you represent a business, there's that kind of thing. So I don't regret it. I just think it's like when you're dating, right? When the first time you go on a date with someone, you're more excited about being able to tell people you're on a date than actually going on the date, I think. Mm-hmm. By your 30th year of being single and a bachelor and divorced and all that kind of stuff, you kind of know enough about it that you're sort of a bit guarded and you're a bit aware of the situation and you're sort of aware of the limitations of where you will be able to go and what your hard limits are and all that kind of stuff. Sure. So I don't think I hate, okay. So going forward, I'm going to carry on with this podcast. I'm going to take a small break after this, but I'm going to carry on with it. And I've got some, honestly, guests that I have previously tried to get hold of who haven't replied, who are now coming on. Yeah. So I'm over the moon that it's established enough that some people are coming on and excited about it and stuff, which is great. So I'm not going anywhere, and it's going to be here for as long as I can financially make it work.
So looking at that first 100 then, and again we'll couch it in your own development. What episodes stick out for you as being awakening, useful? You'd happily, if you were just a listener, you'd happily recommend that episode because you find a great degree of truth and it helped you in a particular direction you were happy to go in. And I guess opposite of that, what episodes would you go, actually, that was deeply unhelpful?
Okay.
And I ask that not to make the whole body of work sound negative, but I think what we've determined here is that through this process, you've grown to know exactly what you don't want and what is crap. Yeah. As much as this has been extraordinarily useful and provocative in the right sort of way.
So I'll give you an example. I'm trying to get on the woman who runs the...
You're trying to get on the woman who runs the...
who runs my motor. No, I'm... I've forgotten her name, that's really bad. But she runs the all-female comedy festival. I think it's in Oxford. Right. And I want to get her on because I've just had Maureen Younger on, who took over one of her gigs. And it was interesting to talk to her about all-female gigs because for me it's really interesting to hear that side of it, because obviously I'm on those gigs, I don't go to those gigs if at all, and so I don't really understand that area of it, and for me that's interesting. The thing I didn't like about the episode with Maureen was the reaction I got. The day it came out, I think I had about a dozen tweets from female people, both comedians and people who just listen, all of whom were like, thank you for doing this, thank you for representing, all that kind of stuff. And then I got a few DMs from people who were like, one person commented on the YouTube video and just called me sexist and said that I was promoting sort of internal sex, like reverse sex, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't bother engaging with it because
by supporting the idea of having all female nights. Yeah. Okay.
And to be honest with you, I didn't support or come out against it. I said to her, as I say on the pod, I'm going to take devil's advocate positions on this that I don't necessarily believe in, and I'm going to ask you questions that I'm sure you've been asked before, and I did, about, do you think they're worth having? Do you think they're even needed anymore? Do you think they segment people? All that kind of stuff. And I was really happy with how she handled all those questions and how it went. For me, stuff like that really frustrates me because it happens all the time. So, I've had guests come on before where they've said, they've said something that's personally offended someone, and they've gone, I can't believe you'd have that person on. They did a joke about rape 2 years ago, and I can't, I can't believe that you had that person on. They commissioned a thing with someone who, did, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? When I'm doing research for guests, at this stage in the pod, I'm looking for a story. I'm looking for something interesting that I think will last sort of an hour of and keep your attention. I do enough research that most things come out in that area, right? And there's probably, I think there's 4 now episodes that I've recorded that will never see the light of day because I found stuff out since, because there's been issues with it. With one, there was a legal issue where I nearly got sued, and they'll never come out. And I refuse to publicly say who these people are, because it's not worth my time to get sued. I don't have the money for this to work anyway, let alone that. So for me, there have been episodes, and there's been a lot of shit behind the scenes that I don't tell people about that have made it not worth it.
Okay.
And there are days where, I'll spend 2 days editing something, and then I'll get, so with that one, 2 days editing and doing the rounds that they offered, and then getting an email from their solicitor going, actually, we've changed our mind. It misrepresents the person. We don't want it out. If you do that, we'll sue.
So this is getting in quite a raw area again.
Sorry, no.
So what does make it worthwhile?
Okay, so let's go to the positive episode.
Yeah. Okay.
I figured let's go positive at the end.
Yeah.
So the Ian Coyle one.
Because and before you start this, in case it starts drifting towards the negative again, I personally think it's an incredibly worthwhile endeavour. Like, you have put together an archive where, if you wanted to start from maybe not start from scratch from comedy. I don't think that's a terrible idea. If you
I wouldn't start now. If I was starting now, I probably wouldn't. Now that I know everything I know.
Okay, but I think if you have the want to do it. There is something in there. There's a how-to guide, essentially, of how to do everything to get you to your first. Let's say if Edinburgh is the goal for somebody over the course of a year, I think it's an extraordinarily helpful body of work, which is you've said that it's obviously the offshoot of a lot of other podcasts. Like there are similar things in other areas, but there isn't really something like this within comedy. A lot of them are just chats with. Primarily comics about the artistic process. There's very little looking at the business side, which this is as a body of work, this is what I think is most important for. It is the learning the PR, it's learning the advertisement, it's learning to focus, it's learning to be goal orientated, it's learning to maximize your efficiency and to to check your hopes at the door in favour of reality. I think there's something very realistic and essential in this body of work.
I hate to quote my own book, but in the intro I say it's called show business for a reason. And it's 50% business and 50% show. You need a product to sell, but you also really need to know how to sell that product. And I don't care if you've got an agent, I don't care if you've got PR, I don't care if you've got a marketing team behind you. If you can't hold your own in an interview, you can't sell the idea. So, I'm getting better at it. I'm not the best at it. But when, if someone sits me down in an interview and says to me, so what's the show about? And I go, and I don't have a snappy one-line pitch or even a pre-rehearsed, well, it's, this kind of thing. Even in the edit, they're not going to make you sound amazing. It doesn't matter. So, a PR can get you so far. They can get your knee in the door. They can get you sort of pushed through the door if you need to be. But you then have to be the one that does the work. They can't sell you if you don't know how to sell you, It's, again, going back to dating. If you can't make yourself come, how are they meant to learn? So I just think. So yeah. Positive episodes. Ian Coyle, love that episode. That taught me more about TV than I think anything else. The more recent one with Hat Trick Productions, that was really interesting. I've been a fan of Hat Trick Productions for ages, and I was really, really glad they got back to me and got me on. So it got me in the door. Copsticks episode, I really liked. I really, really liked being able to talk to someone who's been doing reviewing for so long and has seen more shows than I will ever see.
Yeah.
And knows more about reviewing than anyone else. So, she polarizes people for a million other reasons, but if you can't really fault her diligency towards the art and to trying to improve situations and stuff. I massively enjoyed the episode with you guys. I know that sounds like I'm brown nosing, but frankly, how many times did I email you to try and get you on before you sort of went, we've got to wait a bit? And I know now because you were trying to get this stuff off the ground.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I probably spoke to you about 4 times to get you on because I knew how good you are at promoting, and I know how much you love comedy and how much it means to you.
Yeah.
And so I wanted you on when you were Beehive days.
Yeah.
And now Barrel days.
Yeah.
Thank
you very much.
You're very welcome.
So I did enjoy it. I did being part of that. I did enjoy being part of that. I did enjoy contributing to that.
It's a shame John was there.
No, John did as well. So it's,
no. I really enjoyed the one with Karen Corrin.
Yeah.
Because at the time, she was getting a lot of shtick for taking over a free venue, or a free fringe venue, and the pay what you want model. And we sat down. The first thing I said to her was, "Can we talk about the pay what you want model?" And the reason the intro to that the podcast, before I even done the sort of intro bit to that, is her going, "Just get to know me."
Yeah.
Was because before we'd started the episode, she was having a problem with her iPhone. I was showing her how to do something on it, and she's a lovely woman. And say what you want about her taking over a venue that she owned 20 years ago, whatever, right? She gives a shit. And I don't care that it's a for-profit one, it's a big 4 one, all that kind of crap like that. She does give a shit about the acts, and she does give a shit about her business. And it's her business to give a shit about the acts. Regardless of that being a tautology, it makes sense.
Yes.
So I was really happy with that episode in that the edit of that was a bit reversed, because it was kind of like I'd put in a bit from the middle at the start and then done the intro and then backwards, partly because I knew it would make people listen, and partly because I wanted people to know that she's probably fed up with hearing these odd little rumours about her. Same with the Jeff Whiting episode. One of the best things we covered in that was the Jenny Collier thing about her getting an email saying there are too many women on the bill. And dumb email, stupid thing to say, stupid thing to do. He explained it. There are elements of the explanation that warranted further questioning in hindsight, and there are elements of it that make sense as to why it happened. And I don't want to get into it right now. It's not like a thing I want to talk about too much. But the fact that he got to have his say, because all her say was, I've got this email. What a shitty thing to do. And I completely agree. On paper, that is a very shitty thing to do. And I still think it's a shitty thing to do. But at that point, he hadn't said anything, and his company hadn't said anything or explained anything. And he told me on that episode, his wife had just left him that morning as well, and he didn't know that email had been sent. And I'm not trying to give him sympathy. It's it's business and personal there, and you can't mix the two too much. But can you with comedy? Because it's such a personal one. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, one is going to bleed into the
exactly, other. Especially when it's that serious of a situation for someone and that kind of thing. So. For me, that was an eye-opening experience to see a promoter who, until that point, I had seen as this sort of hard-nosed businessman running a million clubs, and the amount of rumours you hear about him. He only books drivers. Oh, he only does this. He books women on quotas. All this kind of crap. For him to just sit down and say, if one comedian doesn't get a big gig because 200 people have emailed for it, and then another one meets that comedian, and they have a chat, and they both have come up with the same idea. Out of nowhere, it's true. And I think we're all been guilty of that. We've all been guilty of going, I think what I think is true. Let's find one other person to back it. It's the same in society today. We're in our little echo chambers. I'll post something up on Facebook and go, hey, this, that, and this. And they'll go, oh, you're right. And I'll go, right, facts out the window. My feeling is correct. And it's not.
Yeah. Okay. So that sounds like something, as a presenter of a podcast, you find you find a degree of pride in. I guess bringing it back to the question I'd like to understand is maybe I'm trying to work out. So why am I asking you how you've developed as a comic over this period? Is because I feel like there are enough people that I know who have developed as comics or taken strategic or important steps in their career either artistic or business because of things that they've learned on your podcast.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm trying to wonder, if the person who created that body of work has also had that similar experience, or is there something completely? Have I been, over the course of this, asking completely the wrong things?
Well, I'll tell you this now. So I know about a dozen people who are currently gigging, who told me before they started. The reason they started was they found this, they were thinking about doing it, and they thought they could do it. One of them, who's a friend of mine who's just won a really big award, he said, he openly said to me, he came to a gig of mine and said, yeah, I've started gigging, it was because I listened to your podcast. And I went, oh, thanks, mate. He went, yeah, I thought if you could do it, I could do it. And I was like,
right,
thanks, mate, that's really nice. I mean, we're good friends, don't get me wrong, so, it's not a problem. But I was just like, it's good to know that people think, oh, if he can do it.
Yeah.
But the way I take in this information is I need more time to process it, because for me, I'm just, it's like when you edit a podcast.
Yeah.
You have the interview, you're spending all the time looking at the levels, looking at the questions, making sure you don't forget anything, making sure you get them in the right order, making sure the guest is happy, making sure the guest level's fine, all that kind of stuff. Then when you're doing the edit, you listen through it, you do all your points, you cut out all the bits that are crap, you cut out all the I've then got to go through it one more time and make the show notes. I've then got to upload the thing, do the intro, do the outro. But you're not necessarily listening to it and taking it in. I have to go through it in a proof edit and listen to it as if I am listening to it for the first time, which in many ways I am. And I'm sort of taking a minute and I'm going, oh, that was interesting. Oh, that was boring. I'll take that bit. Oh, that's not that interesting. Oh, he's repeated that there. Because I'm not, fully in it. So it has informed how I'm dealing with a lot of areas. It's kind of put me off trying to get on TV and trying to do that. It's made me more interested in the radio medium. I'm currently a scoop, if you like. I'm currently starting to work with a friend of mine to do a 6-part sort of. It's sort of a dark anthology, but it's a radio-based one, and it's sort of it's just a weird idea I've had. That they're very good at sort of helping me write. And I've got another idea for a load of. They're sort of 10-minute shorts of what serial killers do on their days off. So like it starts after the murder, what they would do that 24 hours. It's kind of a dark thing about buying more rope because they're out of rope now, and like taking their time over sort of sending the new email to the police, and sort of all the sort of in-betweeny jokey bits and stuff. Because I'm just fascinated by serial killers. I think they're amazing. So but yeah, so it's informed me to go that route and say, look, I will build an audience for what I'm doing. And that way, when I talk to TV person, I can go, hey, this video's got 30,000 views, 50,000 views, 100,000 views. Have a watch of it because I think it'd be great if we could work together and make it a bigger thing. Rather than going, hey, I've got a script, put it forward. Now, I'm aware that I'm in a privileged position in that, I still have a day job, essentially. It's a writing job, but it's a day job. I have an ability to bring in an income from stand-up as well as from writing. And because I'm now back at home, my bills are a lot lower than some other people's. And so I can invest money in things like that. And I can take a bit more time over stuff like that. I'm aware of the privilege that I have, that other people don't have that facility. What I'm not happy about is the number of people. I had someone the other day say to me, oh, hey, can I ask you a few questions about Edinburgh? And as always, I go, yeah, sure, what do you want to know? And they said, well, I just don't think I can write an hour. Do you think it, like right now I haven't written it, so do you think it's worth pushing myself, or do you, because I just have never written an hour, so I just don't think I could. And I was like, if right now you're saying to yourself, I can't write an hour, that's the smallest part of this process right now. You know what I mean? Like the amount of shit you have to put up with on your way to Edinburgh. If you're thinking, I couldn't even have the hour sorted, get the hour sorted and then find Edinburgh. Yeah. Sign up later. There was someone who said to me the other day, I don't know how mics work for podcasting. And I said, but you've got a phone, like record it on your phone. It's not the best audio quality, I grant you. And, that'll put a few people off, but start there. Like just because I've got, sort of a £400 recorder and two £88 mics.
Money bags.
No, but you say that, but it's come out of patrons donating, and I've saved up that money. It's not, the first recorder I had was 80 quid, and it was literally the bottom end of the Zoom range, and it worked fine. And it, don't get me wrong, it's better now, but the point is that you can do a lot more with a lot less now, and it still looks pretty good. And it comes back to what I was saying before with the stand-up thing. Even a lighting change, even a simple, music cue that you put on something. I can't remember the comedian, but they did a thing where they jokingly did a gunshot thing. And it was just a boing noise, right? And I pissed myself for about 10 minutes because I was expecting like a proper, and I was expecting them to do it with their mouth, and they weren't. They did it with like a foot pedal thing where they pressed it and it, and I was like, it's not genius, but it's such a little moment and it stuck with me. It was Max and Ivan. I saw Max and Ivan do a joke about, in fact, it was a joke about being a baker. I don't know if this was to do with what you're thinking, but Max did a joke about it. And Ivan swung around the stage on these shoes that had little wheels in it, and from the ceiling a bread fell down, and he was a baker out of nowhere. And I pissed myself for ages about that. I was like, who thinks to put a trap door in the ceiling that will make a loaf of bread fall at that point every day for the duration of the Fringe? It's an amazing little moment that sticks with you, and you think, fuck me, they've taken a moment to make that bigger. They've made that better, because yes, they could have just said he's a baker now, but instead of doing that, they made a loaf of bread fall from the bloody ceiling. And how much do you reckon that cost to do, really? Like how much do you cost to make
I don't know anyone in the trapdoor business.
Well, so. That's good to know for tonight's gig. But you know what I mean? Like how much does it cost really to have a button in your pocket that you press that makes a noise? We've all got those fart noise things in your thing. You just adapt that. Yeah. How much does it cost to have just a flat door thing on a button that you don't even need to be that far from you? It's going to skate underneath it and whatever. It's little things that make little differences and take you away from being just that comedian to that comedian.
Okay, so it seems like that more than the live experience is the road to Damascus moment.
Yeah,
that you've.
Oh, I love the live.
Had. Okay,
more than anything.
Yeah,
because I don't know how you feel about podcasting in this way, but let me ask you this, right? Anyone listening to this in the world that when it's out there is consuming the past. They're not living now. They are. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my God.
No. But do you know what I mean? Like when you're on Facebook and you're just scrolling along, you're literally going into the past. You're dredging up the history of everything.
So I find that I'm quite acutely aware of that on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because when I started Instagram, or when I was first, it used to be chronological, and now there seems to be, that's a really nice. It's not snowing, is it? And then it's like, oh, it's your pal from like 5 days ago when it was snowing.
Yeah.
But it's presented to you.
As if.
Yeah. Alongside something from 2 hours ago, alongside something from 1 day ago.
Yeah.
So I absolutely get that. So I don't know why it took so long to explain it with the Instagram chat.
No, it's fine. We're acutely aware of social media right now, so we can talk about it in that.
That is our jobs, basically. So
it is basically our day jobs.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is, when it's live, and don't get me wrong, you've got to prepare a certain amount of stuff to take on stage, especially in a show. But there's room because of the people in there, hopefully, that you can do more with them. That you can, you could just have a moment with them that is just theirs because they were there that night. You can have, I've been trying to do this thing. I do so from sort of November, December, January, I do what I call focus groups, which is essentially where I have people come and watch a preview, but I don't want to call it a preview yet because it's not quite there. And then but they're allowed to get involved.
But you do want to call it a focus group.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a laugh riot.
Well, it does, because people come down, because I call it a comedy focus group essentially, and they come down and they are allowed between jokes to give me feedback and say, that was shit, that was great, that's interesting. Oh, expand on that. I wanted to hear more on that, and give me actual feedback. Right, and then I do previews for the rest of the sort of year, because then I'm sort of like, all right, now I've got to actually make an effort. The what was the point I was trying to make?
Comedy focus group.
Focus group, yeah, but it was something. It's boring, isn't it? You all bored yet? No. I can't remember what my point was, but I'm just trying to say that
it's the focus that's been presented in the past.
Oh yeah. Okay. So by taking a minute at the start of every show and not emceeing it, Because I feel like when you MC something, you're still kind of playing on, not unwritten rules, but things that you would normally do, where you'd go, where are you from? What'd you do? That kind of thing, right? Which I've done in the past. I sort of ask awkward questions, or ask sort of weird questions that I've been thinking about. Like, what's your favourite serial killer? What would you, if you weren't dating them, right? Who of your past would you still like to, like really weirdly awkward questions?
Stuff that really sets up a night of laughs.
Exactly. But it first of all, it does set up the mood in the right way, because it means that I know that they've given me a bit, so they know that they can chuck out honestly stuff that they're saying and things. Obviously I won't
trying to
start
build
there.
a mood of trust.
Yes. And also a mood of this is going to be now. Like, this is all happening right now. I haven't, there are elements of it that are very scripted, but there are elements of it that I am going to riff, and I'm going to go off on one, and I'm going to see where that idea goes. And we're all going to experience this. And it's not the whole, that was shit, I'll never do it again, that kind of thing. It's more, that shit, I'm going to do it again and again and again, because I think there's an interesting idea here. And until I think I literally can't make it funny, I'll do it 10, 15, 20 times. Whereas when I'm writing a script for a 20-minute set at a club, I will drop an idea after 2 goes if it's not funny, because you have to. Yeah, I think the live is the most interesting thing for me right now, but on the podcast I'm interviewing more and more TV people, so it's sort of a juxtaposition of, oh, hello, let's talk about TV. I'm going to go and do some stuff
Let's
on
talk
stage
about
now.
something I'm disinterested in and you wouldn't want me for anyway.
Well, yeah, let's talk about why you would never book me and why that's fine.
That is funny. That is a comedian settling scores with other comics, with people from the past. So, why won't you book me? That's how each episode starts. So, what's your fucking problem with me?
Well, I tell you the most interesting episode that hasn't been out yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's episode 100, and it's with John Montague, and he
But obviously, with this being 101,
it will be out.
It will be out. But as we sit here talking
in the present right now, in the moment we're in, it hasn't been out, but it will have been out about 2 weeks ago. So he has started a podcast, and he represents Sky TV. He commissions for that. So in the day, he represents 11 million viewers who pay him every month to make content, and in the evening, he represents 11 viewers who listen to his podcast. Maybe 12 since this podcast, because probably someone wants to listen to it and email him and go, oh, I loved it. And the reason I had him on, or the reason we'd been chatting, it's a similar thing to you, where I'd emailed him a couple of times and we'd sort of not made it happen. And then I said to him, look, it's interesting now that you have that juxtaposition in your life. I want to talk about why you're doing podcasting, why you're doing that. And the way that him podcasting has opened his eyes. First of all, to his relationship with his son, because he does it with his son. But second of all, to his relationship with content, because it's made him think about, first of all, the process of making it, if he had to do it all, rather than having someone else just do the edit and stuff. But also the amount of work that his son puts into it, because often he's less involved in that after the commissioning part.
Yeah.
And so for him to sit down with his son, and his son go, right, well, I've made these 5 sections, I've made these jokes, we're going to do these sort of things, I need you to do that, and he sort of has to say the line 4 or 5 times to get the right version for his son, and all this kind of stuff, It's fun to watch someone who, obviously, he's a listener of this, talk about how podcasting's affecting him and his job. Because I think that's something that when you sit at home and you watch Sky TV, you go, oh, look at them, they're commissioning crap. They're not specifically Sky TV, but there's the amount of us who've sat there going, there's nothing good on TV now. Oh, there's this one program I love because I'm a snooty Guardian reader. Oh, it's great. I've done this before, where you go, I only watch one show because of There's loads of good stuff on Sky. There's loads of good stuff on the BBC. Every channel's got their stuff, but they've got to cater to everyone because they're doing that thing.
Well, yes, no. So
whereas in his podcast, he can say
whatever
anything.
they want. Yeah. Okay.
What's your favourite? Go on. Sorry.
No, I just so every Christmas day, my mum and dad are just livid because they go, oh, there's nothing on. There's nothing on.
Well, there is nothing on Christmas Day.
Well, but the thing is, there's loads of stuff on, but you have to be a fan of a specific thing. So
Christmas.
So the big thing for me is obviously Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Where I never watch EastEnders. but there are still 12 million people who want to see EastEnders and dislike Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So, and then you see, it's Call the Midwife's on. It's like, I would never entertain that in the house, but Call the Midwife is regularly watched more than Doctor Who. So it is very much about. It is interesting because I think I'd realised that from doing my own podcasting, but not necessarily so vividly in the way that you've just put it, which is that it helps you understand not just the content you're interested in consuming, but why other people might not be interested in consuming that, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're buffoons, they're idiots.
But it's I think if every person who listens regularly to my podcast made a conscious effort to try and make 10 episodes, not one, because one's fairly easy, because if you kind of know you're making one, you half-arse it.
Yeah.
If you had to make 10 episodes of a podcast about any subject that you're interested in, I think you would appreciate the work that goes into this one's a lot more simple to make than the Time Capsule.
Yeah.
Time Capsule's got sound effects in, it's got intros and outros, it's got music, it's got everything, right? This one obviously is a talk radio show and always has been. I've considered putting music on it, but that'll up the file size and it's already really long and all this kind of stuff. I just don't feel like anyone listening to it really would go, oh, you know what? I would definitely listen to 5 more episodes if it had music in it.
Yeah.
So it's not really a problem.
I would love to hear Hotel California by the Eagles right about now.
That's the outro for this episode. You know it. You just know it. But my point is that I think podcasting is sort of seen as a very low end thing because someone did a joke where they said who was it? Someone did a really good joke about how podcasting is radio, but for people who don't want those annoying quality control people. And it's like, yeah. But also,
well, yes.
But so I just think the amount of people that sort of, and it's not a large number of people, but I think a lot of people don't realise if they want to do a radio show or they want to do a TV show, this is a rare chance for you to do it the way you want it done, with no other people involved, with no concessions to what happens except for maybe your budget or whatever. Right, but then when you get a TV show, there's budgetary issues. There's going to be constraints. There's going to be people above you that you've got to validate. Oh, we want this car crushed. Why can't we have a cheaper car? Oh, because I wrote it in this way. Yeah, but does it really make a difference? It's still a silver. What you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if you're sitting there thinking, but I'd love to be on TV, but the man won't book me, or I haven't got an agent, they'll get me on it. Right? Well, you know what? Maybe, but if you go on that route, I guarantee you that's going to take a lot longer than you going, hey, I'll make the thing that I want to exist. I'll have a portfolio of things that show that I care, show that I can do it, show that I actually want to do it, regardless of whether they're going to let me or not. And that means that you're Googleable, you're searchable, your quality and your work ethic is out there. Even if it's not your best work at the start, even if it's half-assed because you don't have a budget that will mean you can do it. There's a guy called Peter Fellows. At the time of recording, it will be the next episode out, but at the time now, it's number 96 if you want to go back. He is amazing. He quit all social media to just get on with his life, essentially. And he's now not really on anything. And he works with Armando quite a lot. That's how I met him. And he does a combination of things where in his day job he writes for places like Veep and all kinds of things like that, and in his night job he writes scripts for himself, and then at weekends he'll make those scripts using the money that he makes from other things. And he's got a massive Vimeo account, that's pretty much the only social media he uses, where he puts up all of his sketches, all of his things like this, and he puts all his money into that. And on the back of that, people have hired him to work for other things because they've gone, oh shit, he's good, he can write, he knows what he's doing. He's got an agent off the back of that because his agent, instead of reading a script, which is what that agent normally does, watched his thing and went, fuck me, this guy can act, he knows how to write stuff. He fucking went and made it because instead of sitting there, like making a script and leaving it on a hard drive, he went and did it. And it means that there's a fucking drive there that there isn't for 50 other better, I'm not saying this against him, but better writers who just couldn't be asked. It matters that you care a lot in this. And if you don't, and if you can't be asked, I don't see why I would want to work with you. I work with a lot of people who are not the best in their situation or in the thing, but I like them and they give a shit about me and they give a shit about the work I'm doing. And as a result, I really give a shit about them. And I think you could admit, the one thing that you'll admit about me is I'm fucking loyal. I'm needy is what I am. I will stay around for ages.
Well, Simon Caine, that's essentially what I wanted to get out of you. Is
What, just a rant?
No, well, a rant that this body of work has been important to the comic ideology that you have. It's shaped it, or it's articulated what you've always known. I can certainly testify that it's been the same sort of thing for other people. So here is to the next 100 episodes.
Oh, fuck off. I never said I was going to do 100 more. 99.
All right, well, that's the rant redundant now, mate. You obviously don't give that much of a shit.
No, 99. I'll get to 200 and then I'm quitting.
Well, we'll chat again at the next, 201.
201.
So Simon Caine, thank you very much for being part of Ben Verth's Ask the Industry podcast.
Is that going to be the new spin-off from the Doctor Who one?
No.
Do you want to plug the Doctor Who one real quick?
Yes, it's in a bit of a hiatus at the moment.
Fuck it then, mate.
No, so there is a body of work that you can still take in, and we certainly, I guess, like yours, we will be bringing it back together. Mark, my podcast partner, and I are now back in the same city, so it makes recording it that much more easy.
It does,
but it is a Doctor Who fan podcast called On the Time Lash, and we started watching 2005 version of Doctor Who from the start, and we talk about episodes in chronological order while we're having a bevy, and then we compare it and contrast it to a similar classic episode of Doctor Who, and by the end we're absolutely tanked.
I have a question for you about that then.
Yeah.
Okay. What has been the best thing that's come out of that podcast for you? Bringing it back around to you. I'm going back to being the interviewer.
What have I enjoyed? So I love spending time with my friend Mark. First and foremost, that's what it is. And it's allowed us to be a bit more formal and determined that spending time together is going to be the thing we do. It has also really sharpened my analytical skill.
Was it analysing TV?
Analysing TV, analysing general storytelling, and to put things, to stop being so passive in terms of viewing stuff. It really, or I ask of it that it is something I really enjoy: context, historical context, televisual context, even down to the stories from the set, what was affecting the actors on that given day they're recording that given scene. It's allowed me to be, for something that I really like, something that I love, it's allowed me to be a lot more engaging with it, over and above just sitting and watching an episode or a story or something.
So you would say that podcasting has given you a sort of, should we say, a renewed. What's the word? What's the Doctor do? He regenerates. A regenerated view.
There's a good regenerative process, because there's some times where I kind of fall away from it. It's like I'm done. I'm saturated. But
go on, sorry.
No, but I will come back to it because I want to.
Does it? And I don't know your numbers. I'm not a Doctor Who fan, so I don't really listen to it, and you're aware of that. So it's not a horrible thing. But does it I assume when you started, you're not sort of thinking, oh, this is going to be the Doctor Who, everyone's going to do this.
So
does it annoy you?
So there was absolutely no desire to do anything other than to create something, like you said, that we wanted to. That people engage with us when we ask for comments and feedbacks on stories when it comes up. That is great. And it's usually the same sort of people that come along. Never met them in real life, but they've always been pretty illicit in commanding respect because of the intellectual quality of their opinions and their humour as well. It's something, both of us are funny on it, and so it invites, I think, other people who like to be charmingly risible about something, understand the affection for it, but also understand the comedic element to it. So, On the Time Lash.
On the Time Lash. There'll be a link in the show notes.
And if anyone's in Edinburgh, you are very welcome to Monkey Barrel Comedy Club on Blair Street.
Which is another project that you've done simply because you wanted it to exist and because you wanted to connect with people, and it's the same thing, isn't it?
On a much larger and more demanding scale. But everything has been worth it. And I hope that is something that is shared by the people who come through the door. So we're sold out most nights, which is absolutely a great position to be. As we record this, it's in January. January could absolutely be a nightmare of a month. But we've been sold out most nights. And there is something just ridiculously gratifying about the live experience. Not just as a performer, I get to obviously perform on my own stage, but just watching shows and other comics coming on, having a nice time, and the audience seemingly experiencing something that I've never really... There's a sharpness, there's a tang to Monkey Barrel, which I've not seen in other comedy clubs, which I really like.
So in short, get off your ass and make something.
Yeah. That
Not you, the listener.
No. But I'm glad. That is a great positive statement in an interview, which was swerving to. I thought I was going to have to.
I didn't think it was negative.
You know, well, no, but there was a quality to it where I felt that you were beginning to look more at the harsh quality, the harsh tone, the harsh lessons that may have come from it.
You just bring it out in me, mate. You bring out the negative devil in me.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be the interviewer for this final for now episode.
Thank you very much. That was me. It feels really weird to say that. Thank you, Ben, for doing this, and thank you for the whole team at Monkey Barrel for giving us a place to record it at their club. I hope that you got a lot out of that, and I hope it gave you a bit more of an insight into what goes on behind the doors of this show. A lot of this show is looking behind the doors of TV channels and radio stations and clubs that I felt like this would be a really interesting one to sort of offer the reverse of... I say the reverse, still the same thing, it's just of the show. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot out of it. On a personal note, as I said in the last episode, I just want to take a minute to thank you for listening. Like, even if you've dipped in and out since the start, or if you've really sat and listened to every episode, honestly, the kind words you tweet me or you Facebook me really make the hours in an edit suite worth it, and your words on social media, sharing the podcast, are massively appreciated. So please do keep that going. That would be really appreciated, and very much something that will help the show continue. The show isn't going anywhere, as I said in the podcast. I'm going to take a few weeks off, probably a month, and come back with a few little changes that you'll notice, a few little changes that you might not, but it will still be the same kind of show that you know and love, I hope. I'm also going to be revamping the Patreon, which we will get to in another thing, but ultimately, while I'm away, if you could do me a favour and do one of these things to support the show, please do. Don't skip. Do not skip. Do not stop listening. Do not, whatever you're doing, right? Listen to these. There are just a few things. It'll take me less than a minute to tell you, and I would really appreciate it if you just took the time to do one of them, because it will help with guests and the future of the show for the next 99 episodes, so we can get to number 200. Here we go. Right, top 6 things you can do to support the show. It's like Top of the Pops, isn't it? Right. Number 1. I should really start at number 6, and then that way it will be like Top of the Pops going down to the... But the thing is, they're not in like an order like that. But anyway, okay, right. I said it would take a minute. We're going to do this. Right. Coming in at number 6. Leave an honest, ideally positive review in iTunes. We're near 100. I would love to get 101 episodes with 101 reviews. If you can do that, please do. It takes a minute to leave the review, and if you haven't got an iTunes account, a minute to sign up. Please do that. Make a note on your list. Make a note on your today list or to-do list, whatever you call it, and do that. It helps with the chart positionings. It helps with looking better to people that are maybe giving it a chance for the first time. Do that. Number 5, pick your favorite episode and share it on social media, or just in a DM to a friend and go, look, this is great. I think you'll get something out of it. If you're publicly sharing it, tag me in it, either on Facebook or on Twitter. I'm at This Made Me Cool on there, and I will thank you for doing that. I always thank everyone, even if it takes me a few days to get back to people sometimes. I do thank everyone. So please, please, please share an episode. That helps get the reach out there. That helps get the downloads out there, which ultimately leads to more listeners, which ultimately leads to more guests who want to come on because there's a listenership. So please do that. Number 4, check out my other podcast. I have one called the Audio Time Capsule. It's where a guest comes on, leaves 20 questions, and then a year later comes back on and answers them. I've done 8 episodes at this point. 5 of them are from comedians, a couple of them are from musicians, and one of them's a magician even. So if you'd like to hear that, it's also the thing I mentioned in the podcast that Radio 4 are interested in, and we're discussing developing. So if you want to listen to that while it's still underground rather than a mainstream thing, that's the place to find it. I'm really proud of it. It's something that I think is a little bit innovative in terms of podcasting, and it's a little bit different in terms of a structure of a show, which is something that we kind of talked about on the pod, about how most people are just interviewing, one-to-one. This is person to person over a year. So please do check that out and support that if you can. That is a passion project of mine that I really think is funny and interesting, and that's the kind of comedy that I like to produce. So hopefully if you like my comedy, you'll like that podcast, and you'll get the sense of the introspective humour that I like producing. So, and as Ben put it, the intellectual humour that I like producing. So if you consider yourself a bit of a Guardian reading snob, that might be something that you enjoy. If you don't, it might be something you still enjoy, but, what other newspaper are you reading, really? I'm not really a reader of newspapers. I don't trust any of the media. Now we're off topic, aren't we? We're getting into conspiracy theories. That's, anyway. Coming in at number 3, donations. Right, you can do it as a one-off via PayPal, or you can do it as a Patreon on Patreon. The links are in the show notes for both those things. Please, please, please consider doing either, right? They really help out the show. They give me a budget. I'm going to be revamping the Patreon, and I'm going to be putting rewards up there that are different to what they already are, but I would love to get some more people backing it now. So don't wait. As I said, there won't be many episodes in the next month because I'm taking some time off to do that and to get the time capsule off the ground. So do take a minute, sign up. It won't cost you anything except for the minute to sign up, and you'll just wait there until we revamp it, and I will send a message out that will let you know that there's going to be revamps and what's happening there. So please do consider doing that. Number 2, I've just realised I've combined 3 and 2 in the same one because one was one-off donations and one was Patreon, so ignore those. Number 1, you can buy me a drink. I've just signed up to Ko-fi, that's Ko-fi, which is a website that allows you to send me $3, which is the price of a coffee. I've never bought a coffee, so I don't actually know if that is the price of a coffee, but it seems quite low for a price of a coffee, but also it seems quite high because to me that's quite expensive for a drink. Full disclosure, I'll probably be spending it on a smoothie and Toblerone because I don't really like hot drinks. But if you would like to send me a specific amount of money, you can do it through there. All of it helps. All of it pretty much goes back into show production because I don't really have a budget for this. So any of these would be appreciated. If you want to do a combination of a few, that'd be great. I'll be watching out to see who does what. All the links are in the show notes for all those things. Other episodes you might enjoy while I'm away are the one with Ben Miller and John Verth. I got that the wrong way around. Ben Verth and John Miller. They talked about their purpose-built comedy club that we recorded this episode in, the Monkey Barrel. So if you'd like to give that episode a listen and support those guys, thank you very much. Genuinely, thank you for listening. I know the last episode had a bit of sentimentality to it, and so is this one. I promise episode 102 is not going to be me being all gushy. I'm not going to spend the next 99 episodes going, guys, we're at 109. It's just really nice to have hit such a landmark. And I remember when we hit episode 10, how excited I was because when I first started, all the sort of blogs about podcasting said most podcasts don't make it past episode 10. And I'd already recorded episode 11 when I was putting out episode 10. So to me, I was really excited. I was like, yeah, I've shown these anonymous blogs that think that, I'm not going to carry on with this. And now I'm at episode 101, which is crazy. There are so many podcasts that don't get to this number and don't continue on as strong as we are as a unit and as a community. So please, please, please do that and support the community and keep it going. Oh, and join the Facebook group. I forgot that. Facebook group called Ask the Industry Podcast, and it's on Facebook, obviously. Join that. You'll see why it's worth joining when you get in there. I know that sounds really vague, but frankly, I just want to finish the recording of this now. Oh, one other thing. I never plug this anymore, and I probably should. I've got a book out. It's called How to Make a Living by Working for Free. If you would like to buy yourself a copy for you or for a friend, or it can either be a digital copy because I've got that as a PDF or as a version on Amazon Kindle, or a paperback copy. You can buy that on my website at simoncaine.co.uk/shop, or you can email me, and I'm more than happy to discuss, if you want to send one to a mate around the world or something like that. It's all about trying to create a community around the free content you put out to make yourself a sustainable artist. And I've interviewed loads of people who've done it, and it's something that I'm trying to do with this more. So if you would like to read about that because you're thinking about starting a project and you think that it would be something that you would get value from and enjoy, please do buy a copy. It really helps me out. It really helps the show out because the money all goes back into that and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, buy a book. That'd be great. If you're going to give a donation of £5 or more, you can have a book. Have a book instead of just giving a £5 if you want something back for your donation. Or you can just give a £5, that's absolutely fine as well. The RC Industry Podcast is a Fruit That Got in Gravity's Way production for the internet. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for subscribing. And thank you for rating and donating if you do. I'll see you all in about a month's time. Bye.